Welcome to my channel, my friends. Today, I want to take you on a journey, an exciting journey that could change the way you think about life, money, and success. What I'm about to share isn't just a story. It's a lesson that has transformed millions of lives, including mine. We're talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the most powerful books ever written on how to achieve financial freedom. Imagine this. You're a young boy or girl growing up, watching the adults in your life. One person says, study hard, get a good job, and save money. Another says, learn how money works, make it work for you, and build wealth. Two completely opposite ideas. Which one would you follow? This was the life of Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He had two father figures in his life, two men with very different beliefs. He called them his poor dad and his rich dad. Poor Dad was his biological father, a highly educated man with a good job. He worked as a teacher and always believed that success comes from working hard, getting good grades, and climbing the career ladder. But despite his education, Poor Dad struggled. He lived paycheck to paycheck, worried about paying bills, and believed that talking about money was impolite. Rich Dad, on the other hand, was not highly educated. He didn't have a fancy degree or a government job. But he had something even more valuable: knowledge about money. Rich Dad owned businesses, made investments, and believed that financial education was more important than formal education. He said, "You don't work for money. You make money work for you." Now imagine being a young boy like Robert standing between these two men. Both of them are giving you advice, but their advice couldn't be more different. Poor Dad said, "Get a good job for security." Rich Dad said, "Create jobs for others." Poor Dad said, "Money is the root of all evil." Rich Dad said, "The lack of money is the root of all evil." Robert was confused at first. He loved both of them, but he started noticing something. Poor Dad, despite his intelligence, was always stressed about money. Rich Dad, despite not being as educated, was always relaxed and confident about his future. One day, Robert asked Rich Dad, "Why are you so confident about money?" And Rich Dad replied with a smile, "Because I understand how it works. Most people don't. They work hard all their lives for money, but never learn how to make it work for them." That one sentence changed everything for Robert. It planted a seed in his mind, a seed of curiosity. He decided to learn from Rich Dad, to understand his secrets, and to follow his footsteps. Now let's pause here for a moment and reflect on this. Isn't this the reality for so many of us? We grow up being told, go to school, get a good job, and save for retirement. But has anyone ever taught us how to handle money, how to grow it, how to escape the cycle of working just to pay bills? Your mindset about money shapes your future. If you see money as something scary or evil, you'll always struggle with it. But if you see money as a tool, something you can control and grow, you'll open the door to freedom and opportunities. Think about it. If you had two paths in front of you, one leading to financial struggles and the other to financial freedom, wouldn't you want to know how to choose the right one? That's exactly what we'll uncover today. Rich Dad continued teaching Robert, and every conversation opened Robert's eyes wider. One day, Rich Dad said something that Robert could not forget. "The rich don't work for money." Robert was puzzled. He thought, "What do you mean? Isn't money the reason people work?" Rich Dad explained with a smile. "No, Robert. The poor and middle class work for money, but the rich make money work for them. That is the difference." Rich Dad explained how most people live their lives in a cycle, a trap he called the rat race. He said, "When you're young, you go to school. There, you're taught to study hard so you can get a good job. Once you get a job, you work hard to earn money. With that money, you buy things like a house or a car. But those things come with bills, mortgages, loans, taxes, and repairs. So you work even harder to pay for them. It never ends. Rich Dad paused and added, "People think they're working for financial security, but they're actually working for their boss, the government, and the bank. The harder they work, the deeper they get into this cycle. This is why they never escape the rat race. Imagine a man named John. John earns $3,000 a month. As soon as John gets a raise and starts earning $4,000, what does he do? He buys a bigger house, a better car, or a new phone. His expenses grow with his income. Instead of saving or investing, he keeps spending. Now John has to work even harder to cover these new expenses. This cycle keeps him trapped forever." Robert nodded. He realized that this was exactly what his poor dad was doing. Rich Dad then asked Robert, "Do you know what financial freedom means?" Robert shook his head. Rich Dad explained, "Financial freedom means having enough income from your investments or assets to cover your expenses. When you reach that point, you don't have to work unless you want to. Your money works for you." He continued, "People think being rich is about having a high-paying job. But even someone earning a lot can be broke if their expenses are too high. True wealth comes from having assets that generate income, not from earning a big salary." Rich Dad gave Robert a simple but life-changing lesson about assets and liabilities. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket, even when you're not working. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. 1. Case 1. Buying a car. A young man saves $10,000 and buys a car. The car needs fuel, maintenance, and insurance. Over time, the car loses value. This is a liability because it takes money out of his pocket. Case 2. Investing in property. Another man saves the same $10,000 and buys a small piece of land. He rents it out for $200 a month. Over time, the land's value increases, and it continues to generate income. This is an asset because it puts money into his pocket. Robert was amazed. He realized how often people confuse liabilities for assets. A house, a car, or even expensive clothes may feel like wealth, but they don't generate income. They cost money. Rich Dad told Robert, "The rich buy assets first. They invest in things that make money for them, businesses, real estate, stocks, and even education to increase their skills. These investments generate passive income. Once they have enough assets, they can afford luxuries without worrying about money." Rich Dad gave Robert another example to make it clear. Think of two families. Both earn $5,000 a month. Family A spends all their money on rent, food, and entertainment. At the end of the month, they have nothing left. Family B, on the other hand, spends only $4,000 and invests $1,000 in stocks. Over time, their investments grow, and they start earning $500 a month from dividends. Eventually, this passive income grows large enough to cover their expenses. Family B becomes financially free, while Family A is still stuck in the rat race. Robert was beginning to understand that it wasn't about how much money you earned. It was about how you managed it. Rich Dad told Robert, "Most people think, 'I can't afford it.' But the rich think, 'How can I afford it?' This small change in mindset makes a huge difference." He explained, "When you say, 'I can't afford it,' your brain shuts down. But when you ask, 'How can I afford it?' your brain starts looking for solutions." Rich Dad gave Robert a task. Whenever you want something but think you can't afford it, write down 3 ways you could make it happen. Maybe you can cut unnecessary expenses, work on a side hustle, or learn a skill that pays more. This exercise will train your mind to think like the rich. Robert was still hesitant about investing. He asked Rich Dad, "What if I lose my money?" Rich Dad smiled. That's the difference between the rich and the poor. The poor are afraid of losing money, so they never take risks. The rich understand that failure is a part of learning. If you make a mistake, you don't give up. You learn and try again. Rich Dad shared a plan with Robert for building wealth, even with limited money. 1. Track your expenses. Write down everything you spend money on for a month. Identify unnecessary expenses you can cut. 2. Start small. Begin with small investments like stocks or a savings account that earns interest. 3. Learn every day. Read books, attend seminars, or find mentors who can teach you about money. 4. Build assets. First, focus on buying assets like rental properties or starting a side business before spending on luxuries. 5. Reinvest profits. Don't spend the money you earn from investments. Reinvest it to grow your wealth faster. As Robert started following Rich Dad's advice, he noticed a change in his thinking. He no longer saw money as something to be spent immediately. Instead, he saw it as a tool to create more money. He began looking for opportunities to invest, and slowly but surely, his mindset shifted from scarcity to abundance. Rich Dad's lessons were starting to change Robert's life, one step at a time. Robert's journey with Rich Dad took another turn when Rich Dad said, "To become wealthy, you must first learn how to control your emotions." This puzzled Robert. He asked, "What do emotions have to do with money?" Rich Dad smiled and replied, "Everything." Most people let fear and greed control their financial decisions. These emotions keep them poor. Rich Dad explained, "Fear is what drives people to stay in jobs they hate. They fear not having enough money to pay bills, so they settle for a paycheck instead of taking risks to create wealth. This fear traps them in the rat race. Imagine someone wants to start their own business, but they don't. Why? They're afraid of failing. They're afraid of losing money or being judged. So instead of trying, they stay in a job that pays just enough to survive, but never enough to thrive." Rich Dad then added, "The rich face fear too, but they don't let it stop them. They understand that fear is normal, but action is what matters. If you want to succeed, you must feel the fear and move forward anyway." Rich Dad explained that greed is another emotion that keeps people trapped. Greed makes people believe that more money will make them happy. They think, if I buy this car, I'll feel successful. If I buy this big house, people will respect me. But these things only create more expenses and stress. He continued, "True happiness doesn't come from owning things. It comes from freedom. Freedom to do what you love and spend time with the people you care about. And that freedom comes from building assets, not spending money on things you don't need." Rich Dad told Robert, "If you want to control your emotions, you need knowledge. Most people are afraid of money because they don't understand it. They don't know how to invest, so they avoid it. They don't know how taxes work, so they overpay. They don't know how to grow wealth, so they stay poor." He encouraged Robert to start learning about 1. Investments. Understanding stocks, real estate, and other ways to grow money. 2. Taxes. Learning how the rich legally pay less in taxes by using smart strategies. 3. The market. Knowing when to buy and when to sell. Rich Dad emphasized, "The more you know, the less afraid you'll be. Knowledge gives you power over your fear. One of Rich Dad's most powerful lessons was about changing how you see money. He told Robert, "Stop thinking like a consumer. Start thinking like an investor." For example, imagine you earn $1,000. A consumer will spend it on clothes, gadgets, or entertainment. An investor will ask, "How can I use this $1,000 to make more money?" They might buy stocks, start a small business, or invest in a course to learn new skills. Over time, the investor's money grows, while the consumer's money disappears. Rich Dad taught Robert how to see opportunities that others miss. He said, "Most people don't recognize opportunities because they're too busy working or spending. The rich are always looking for chances to grow their wealth." He gave Robert an exercise. When you walk down the street, don't just look at shops. Ask yourself, how could I own one of these? What does this business need to succeed? Train your mind to think like an owner, not just a customer. Robert started practicing this and found that the world was full of opportunities. A small cafe for sale, an old house that could be renovated and rented out, or even a website idea that could grow into a business. As Robert began to learn and apply Rich Dad's lessons, he faced doubts from others. People told him, "You're too young to invest," or "That's too risky." Even his poor dad warned him to focus on a safe job instead of chasing dreams. Rich Dad advised Robert, "People will always criticize what they don't understand. But remember, they're speaking from their own fears, not yours. If you listen to them, you'll end up like them, stuck in the rat race." He encouraged Robert to stay focused and surround himself with like-minded people who believed in growth and success. Rich Dad told Robert, "You don't have to start big. In fact, small wins are the best way to build confidence." He shared an example of a young woman who wanted to start investing but had only $50. Instead of waiting to save a large amount, she began buying shares of small companies. Over time, her investments grew, and she gained the confidence to take bigger risks. Rich Dad explained, "Success is built step by step. Each small win gives you the courage to aim higher." Rich Dad also emphasized the role of daily habits in achieving wealth. He told Robert, "Your habits determine your future. If you save and invest a little every month, it will grow over time. But if you spend everything you earn, you'll stay stuck." He recommended a simple habit. 1. Pay yourself first. Set aside a portion of your income for savings or investments before paying any bills or expenses. 2. Track your progress. Keep a journal of your financial growth. Seeing your progress will motivate you to keep going. Rich Dad warned Robert about one common mistake: impatience. He said, "Most people give up because they don't see results quickly. They expect to become rich overnight. But building wealth takes time, discipline, and consistency. When you plant a seed, you don't see results immediately. You have to water it, protect it from pests, and wait. Over time, it grows into a strong tree that provides fruit for years. Wealth is the same. Money is a tool, not the goal. The goal is freedom. The freedom to live life on your terms, to follow your passions, and to help others. Once you achieve that, you'll truly understand what it means to be rich." Robert left that day feeling more inspired than ever. He was determined to break free from the rat race, build assets, and create the life he had always dreamed of. One day, after many lessons, Rich Dad told Robert, "Now you're ready for the most important truth about becoming wealthy. Success is not about luck or talent. It's about mindset, hard work, and action." Robert leaned in closer, eager to hear more. Rich Dad explained, Many people dream of becoming rich, but very few take action. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect idea. But the truth is, there is no perfect time. The best time to start is now. He gave Robert an example. Imagine two friends. One says, "I'll start saving and investing when I make more money." The other starts small, saving just $10 a week. 10 years later, the second friend has built a fortune, while the first is still waiting for the right time. Rich Dad continued, "Opportunities are everywhere, but only those who act on them see results. Don't wait until you're ready. Start with what you have." Rich Dad also taught Robert that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of the journey. Every successful person has failed many times, he said. He shared a story about a businessman who started 5 companies, all of which failed. People laughed at him and called him a fool. But he didn't give up. On his 6th attempt, he built a company that became wildly successful and changed his life. Rich Dad smiled and said, "Do you think he would have succeeded if he stopped after his first failure?" Rich Dad emphasized the importance of self-discipline in achieving financial freedom. He said, "It's easy to spend money, but it takes discipline to save and invest it. Always pay yourself first. Even if you have bills or debts, set aside a portion of your income for savings or investments before spending on anything else." Rich Dad explained, "This habit forces you to be creative and resourceful with the rest of your money. It also builds the discipline you need to grow your wealth." Rich Dad noticed that many people let their doubts stop them from pursuing their dreams. He told Robert, "Your thoughts create your reality. If you focus on your fears, you'll find reasons to fail. But if you focus on your dreams, you'll find ways to succeed." As their lessons came to an end, Rich Dad shared one final surprising piece of advice. "The richest people are those who give back." Robert was confused. "How does giving make you richer?" he asked. Rich Dad explained, "When you help others, you create value. Whether it's sharing knowledge, mentoring someone, or donating to a cause, giving back multiplies your success. It brings fulfillment and strengthens your network, which often leads to even greater opportunities." He told Robert a story about a wealthy man who started a scholarship fund for underprivileged students. Not only did this act of generosity change hundreds of lives, but it also brought the man immense joy and recognition, which opened doors to new partnerships and businesses. Rich Dad's last piece of advice was simple but powerful. The moment you stop learning, you stop growing. Years later, Robert looked back on his journey and realized how Rich Dad's lessons had transformed his life. He had built wealth not just in money, but also in freedom, confidence, and the ability to help others. Robert shared this message. No matter where you are in life, you have the power to change your future. It doesn't matter if you're starting with nothing. What matters is your mindset and your willingness to take action. Wealth is not just about money. It's about creating a life where you can follow your passions, help others, and live without regrets. As you finish this story, remember, your journey to financial freedom begins today. Start small, stay consistent, learn from your failures, dream big, and never, ever give up. Because the only limit to your success is the limit you place on yourself. The world is full of opportunities waiting for you to take the first step. Your time is now. Make it count.